What if the most protected person in the world had been secretly recorded for months, and the one person who discovered it was sworn to protect them with their life? What if every private conversation, every confidential meeting, every personal moment had been captured without their knowledge? And what if the person who found this evidence had to choose between loyalty to the crown and exposing a conspiracy that could shake the very foundations of the monarchy? This is not just another royal scandal. This is the story of James Mitchell, a dedicated royal protection officer whose routine security check uncovered something that would test every principle he held dear. What started as a simple inspection of Prince William's private office became a discovery that would change his life forever and threaten the stability of the British royal family. In a world where privacy is the ultimate luxury and trust is everything, one hidden microphone was about to expose secrets that were never meant to see the light of day. The question isn't what was recorded, it's what James Mitchell decided to do with what he heard, and whether his choice would save the monarchy or destroy it. Some discoveries can't be undone, some secrets can't be buried, and sometimes the person meant to protect you becomes the one who holds your fate in their hands. James Mitchell had served as a royal protection officer for 12 years, and in all that time, he had never questioned a single protocol. His morning routine was as precise as clockwork: arrive at Kensington Palace at 6:30, conduct security sweeps of designated areas, review overnight reports, and prepare for the day's royal engagements. October 15, 2024, began like any other Tuesday, with autumn rain pattering against the palace windows and the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The assignment that morning was routine maintenance of Prince William's private study, a room that served as both office and retreat within the palace walls. James had performed this same security sweep dozens of times before, checking for any potential surveillance devices, ensuring all communication lines were secure, and verifying that the prince's private space remained exactly that, private. The room itself was elegant yet functional, with dark mahogany furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and large windows overlooking the palace gardens. As James began his methodical inspection, he noticed something that made him pause. The antique desk that dominated the center of the room had been moved slightly from its usual position. It was a subtle shift, perhaps only an inch or two, but in his line of work, details mattered. Someone who wasn't familiar with the room's exact layout might never have noticed, but James had memorized every piece of furniture, every decoration, every small detail that made this space unique. Moving around the desk, James dropped to his hands and knees to examine the underside, his flashlight illuminating the dark recesses beneath the heavy wooden structure. What he found there made his blood run cold. Attached to the underside of the desk, carefully concealed but unmistakably present, was a small electronic device no larger than a coin. The device was black, nearly invisible against the dark wood, with a tiny LED light that pulsed softly in the darkness. James recognized it immediately as a high-end surveillance microphone, the kind used by intelligence agencies and private security firms. This wasn't some amateur attempt at eavesdropping. This was professional-grade equipment, designed to capture conversations with crystal-clear quality while remaining virtually undetectable. The device appeared to have been there for some time, given the thin layer of dust that had accumulated around its edges. His first instinct was to remove the device immediately, but his training kicked in. Disturbing potential evidence could compromise any investigation that might follow. Instead, James carefully photographed the device from multiple angles, documenting its exact position and appearance. His hand shook slightly as he held his phone, the implications of his discovery beginning to sink in. Someone had been listening to Prince William's private conversations. Every phone call made from this office, every meeting conducted in this room, every personal moment when the prince believed he was alone, all of it had potentially been recorded and transmitted to unknown parties. The violation of privacy was staggering, but the security implications were even more serious. James stood up slowly, his mind racing through the possibilities. Who could have placed this device? When was it installed? How long had it been operational? Most importantly, who was receiving the intercepted communications? The list of people with access to this room was extremely limited. Palace staff underwent rigorous background checks, and access was strictly controlled and monitored. Looking around the room with new eyes, James began to wonder what conversations might have been captured. Prince William often used this office for confidential calls with government officials, private discussions about royal duties, and personal conversations with his family. The thought that someone had been privy to these intimate moments made James feel sick to his stomach. He needed to report this discovery immediately, but the question of whom to trust weighed heavily on his mind. Standard protocol would be to notify his direct supervisor, Chief Protection Officer David Reynolds, who would then escalate the matter through proper channels. But what if the person responsible for planting the device was someone within the security apparatus itself? What if reporting through normal channels would simply alert the perpetrator that their surveillance had been discovered? James made a decision that would prove to be the first of many difficult choices he would face in the coming days. He would document everything himself before reporting to anyone. He needed to understand the full scope of what he had discovered before potentially triggering a cover-up or alerting those responsible. Using his personal phone rather than his official device, James began taking detailed notes about his discovery. He recorded the exact time, the precise location of the device, and his observations about how long it might have been there. He also began to think about recent events that might provide clues about when the device was installed. The desk had been moved approximately 3 weeks earlier, when the room was being prepared for a series of high-level meetings between Prince William and various government officials discussing upcoming state visits. James remembered the meetings clearly because security had been heightened and additional personnel had been brought in to assist with protective details. That meant the device could have been planted by someone with legitimate access during that busy period when many people were coming and going. The list of suspects suddenly expanded to include not just regular palace staff but also temporary workers, government officials, and even fellow protection officers who had been part of the enhanced security detail. As James continued his inspection of the room, he made another disturbing discovery. There were signs that the device had been serviced or replaced recently. Small scratches on the wood indicated that someone had accessed the device multiple times, likely to change batteries or download recorded data. This wasn't a one-time installation. Someone had been maintaining active surveillance for an extended period. The sophistication of the operation began to dawn on James. This wasn't the work of a lone individual looking to sell royal gossip to tabloid newspapers. The equipment was too expensive, the installation too professional, and the ongoing maintenance too risky for anything other than a serious intelligence operation. Someone with significant resources and expertise had targeted Prince William specifically. James spent the next hour conducting the most thorough security sweep of his career. He checked every piece of furniture, every electrical outlet, every potential hiding spot where additional surveillance equipment might be concealed. To his relief, he found no other devices, but the single microphone was more than enough to represent a massive security breach. As he prepared to leave the room, James took one final look at the device still hidden beneath the desk. Part of him wanted to rip it out immediately, to end the violation of Prince William's privacy once and for all. But he knew that preserving evidence was crucial for any investigation that would follow. The device would remain in place for now, continuing to record conversations, but at least James would be aware of its presence. Walking through the palace corridors toward his supervisor's office, James felt the weight of his discovery pressing down on him. In the span of a single morning, his simple security sweep had uncovered what could be the most serious breach of royal security in decades. The information he carried could trigger investigations that would reach the highest levels of government and potentially expose a conspiracy that threatened the very heart of the British monarchy. The question that haunted him as he prepared to report his findings was whether he could trust anyone with what he had learned. In a world where loyalty was everything and betrayal could come from any quarter, James Mitchell was about to find out just how alone he really was. The hidden microphone beneath Prince William's desk was just the beginning of a story that would test every principle he held dear and force him to make choices that would change his life forever. As he knocked on Chief Protection Officer Reynolds' door, James took a deep breath and prepared to set in motion a chain of events that could not be undone. The discovery of the secret recording device was about to become the first domino in a sequence that would shake the foundations of the royal family and force everyone involved to confront uncomfortable truths about loyalty, duty, and the price of protecting those who serve the crown. Chief Protection Officer David Reynolds listened to James Mitchell's report with a poker face that revealed nothing of his inner thoughts. The office was silent except for the steady tick of an antique clock on the mantelpiece as James detailed his discovery of the surveillance device. Reynolds, a veteran of 30 years in royal protection, had seen many security incidents, but nothing quite like this. "Show me," Reynolds said simply, rising from his chair behind the massive oak desk. The two men walked through the palace corridors in silence, their footsteps echoing off the marble floors. James led Reynolds to Prince William's study, unlocked the door with his security card, and guided his superior to the location of the hidden microphone. Reynolds examined the device without touching it, taking his own photographs and making detailed notes in a leather-bound notebook he always carried. "How certain are you about the timeline?" Reynolds asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The desk was moved 3 weeks ago during the preparation for the state visit meetings, James replied. The device shows signs of recent maintenance, so it's been active and monitored regularly. Reynolds nodded grimly. The implications were staggering. Those meetings had included discussions about sensitive diplomatic matters, security arrangements for visiting dignitaries, and confidential briefings about international relations. If those conversations had been intercepted, the security breach extended far beyond the royal family to matters of national importance. We need to handle this carefully, Reynolds said, straightening up. This information goes no further until we understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. I want you to continue your regular duties as if nothing has happened. Don't change your routine, don't discuss this with anyone, and don't let on that you're aware of the device. James felt a chill run down his spine. Sir, shouldn't we inform Prince William immediately? His privacy has been violated for weeks, possibly months. Reynolds fixed him with a stern look. Prince William's safety is our primary concern. If we reveal that we've discovered the surveillance too early, we could trigger a response that puts him in danger. We need to identify who's behind this before we make any moves that might alert them. Over the next few days, Reynolds quietly assembled a small team of trusted investigators. The group included Detective Inspector Sarah Chen from Scotland Yard's Counterintelligence Unit, cybersecurity expert Dr. Marcus Webb, and Palace security veteran Thomas Harrison. Each member was sworn to absolute secrecy and given only the information they needed to perform their specific roles in the investigation. Dr. Webb's analysis of the surveillance device provided the first breakthrough. The microphone was manufactured by a German company that specialized in intelligence equipment and only sold to government agencies and licensed private security firms. The serial number led to a batch purchased by a London-based security consultancy called Meridian Protection Services 6 months earlier. Detective Inspector Chen's investigation into Meridian Protection Services revealed a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts. The firm's official purpose was providing security services to high-net-worth individuals and corporations, that their client list was carefully guarded, and their financial backing came from sources that proved difficult to trace. While the official investigation proceeded slowly and carefully, James found himself in an increasingly difficult position. He continued his regular duties, protecting Prince William during public engagements and conducting routine security sweeps, all while knowing that the prince's most private conversations were being intercepted. The weight of this knowledge began to take its toll on his sleep and his concentration. During a state dinner at Buckingham Palace, James noticed something that made his blood run cold. Among the guests was Victoria Sterling, a woman he recognized as a senior executive from Meridian Protection Services. She was listed on the guest roster as the representative of a charitable foundation that supported military veterans, but James knew her real identity from the investigation files he'd been shown. Sterling moved through the reception with the confidence of someone completely at ease in royal circles. She spoke fluently with diplomats, shared jokes with members of Parliament, and even had a brief conversation with Prince William himself about her foundation's work. To anyone watching, she appeared to be exactly what her invitation claimed. A dedicated philanthropist supporting a worthy cause. But James knew better. He watched as Sterling's eyes swept the room, cataloguing faces, conversations, and interactions with the practiced gaze of an intelligence professional. She wasn't just attending a social event, she was conducting surveillance in plain sight. The realization that the person behind the recording device was bold enough to attend royal functions while maintaining active surveillance operations sent chills through James. This wasn't some distant threat operating from the shadows. This was someone who had infiltrated the very heart of the royal establishment. Following the state dinner, Reynolds called an emergency meeting of the investigation team. James's identification of Victoria Sterling at the event had accelerated their timeline considerably. If Sterling felt comfortable enough to attend royal functions while running surveillance operations, it suggested she had protection from someone within the establishment itself. We need to identify Sterling's contacts within the palace, Reynolds announced. Someone gave her access to Prince William's study, and someone is providing her with information about his schedule and activities. The investigation team began conducting discreet background checks on all palace staff who had access to Prince William's private areas. They reviewed security footage, analyzed access logs, and conducted careful interviews disguised as routine security updates. The process was painstaking and had to be done without alerting potential suspects that they were under scrutiny. Meanwhile, James made a discovery that complicated matters further. While conducting his regular security sweep of Prince William's study, he noticed that the surveillance device had been accessed again. Fresh scratches on the wood indicated that someone had recently serviced the equipment, likely downloading recorded conversations and replacing the battery. This meant that the surveillance operation was still active, and that whoever was behind it remained unaware that their device had been discovered. Reynolds made the decision to leave the device in place while they continued their investigation, but this created a moral dilemma for James and the entire team. They were allowing Prince William's privacy to continue being violated in order to gather evidence against those responsible. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Webb's analysis of the device's technical specifications revealed that it was designed to transmit data to a receiver within a range of approximately 500 meters. This meant that someone was collecting the recorded conversations from somewhere within or very close to the palace grounds. Using sophisticated radio frequency detection equipment, Webb began scanning the palace and surrounding areas for signs of the receiver. The search took several days and required careful coordination to avoid disrupting normal palace operations or alerting potential suspects. The receiver was found in a seemingly abandoned office building across from the palace. The equipment was sophisticated and expensive, capable of storing weeks of recorded conversations and transmitting them via encrypted internet connections to remote servers. The discovery provided crucial evidence but also revealed the scope and professionalism of the surveillance operation. Financial records associated with the building's lease led back to another shell company, connected to Meridian Protection Services. The web of corporate entities was designed to obscure the true identity of those behind the operation, but each discovery provided another piece of the puzzle. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that this wasn't simply a case of corporate espionage or tabloid journalism. The sophistication of the operation, the expense of the equipment, and the boldness of those involved suggested something far more serious. This was intelligence gathering on an international scale, with implications that extended far beyond the royal family. Reynolds faced a difficult decision about when to brief Prince William on the situation. The longer they waited, the more conversations were intercepted, but moving too quickly could compromise their investigation and potentially alert those responsible. The delicate balance between protecting Prince William's privacy and gathering evidence against his surveillors had reached a critical point. The investigation team also had to consider the possibility that the surveillance extended beyond Prince William's study. If those responsible were bold enough to plant a device in such a secure location, they might have targeted other members of the royal family or other sensitive areas within the palace. James suggested conducting expanded security sweeps throughout the palace, but Reynolds worried that such an obvious escalation in security procedures would tip off anyone involved in the surveillance operation. They needed to find a way to investigate without appearing to investigate, to uncover the full scope of the threat without alerting those responsible. As James prepared for another day of protecting Prince William while knowing that every conversation might be recorded, he reflected on how much his life had changed since discovering the hidden microphone. What had begun as a routine security sweep had evolved into an investigation that could expose a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of British society. The device beneath Prince William's desk continued to pulse its soft LED light, faithfully recording conversations and transmitting them to unknown parties. But now, instead of operating in complete secrecy, the surveillance was being watched by those sworn to protect its target. The hunters had become the hunted, even if they didn't know it yet. Reynolds gathered the investigation team for what he knew would be a crucial briefing. The evidence they had collected painted a picture of a sophisticated intelligence operation with connections that extended far beyond a single security consultancy. The time was rapidly approaching when they would have to make some difficult decisions about how to proceed, and James Mitchell's discovery was about to trigger a confrontation that would test the loyalty of everyone involved. The investigation had reached a critical juncture when Detective Inspector Sarah Chen made a discovery that changed everything. While analyzing the financial records of Meridian Protection Services, she uncovered a connection that sent shockwaves through the investigation team. The security consultancy had received payments from a company called Atlantic Strategic Solutions, which was registered in the Cayman Islands but operated through a network of subsidiaries across Europe and North America. Atlantic Strategic Solutions wasn't just another corporate shell. Chen's research revealed that the company had contracts with intelligence agencies from at least 3 different countries, providing what they euphemistically called information acquisition services. The royal surveillance operation wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a much larger intelligence-gathering network that targeted high-profile individuals across the Western world. Reynolds called an emergency meeting in a secure conference room deep within the palace. The team gathered around a table covered with documents, photographs, and technical analysis reports. The scope of what they had uncovered was staggering. And the implications extended far beyond the violation of Prince William's privacy. "We're not dealing with simple corporate espionage," Reynolds announced grimly. "This is foreign intelligence penetration of the British royal family, and possibly much more." Dr. Webb had made his own disturbing discoveries during his technical analysis. The surveillance device in Prince William's study was just one node in a sophisticated network. His investigation of the signal patterns and encryption protocols revealed that similar devices were likely operating in other locations, all feeding information back to the same collection point. "The technical architecture suggests a coordinated surveillance program," Webb explained. "This isn't one microphone in one location. This is a systematic intelligence collection operation that could involve multiple targets across multiple sites." James felt a chill as the implications sank in. If the surveillance network was as extensive as Webb suggested, it could mean that other members of the royal family were also being monitored. The thought that private conversations involving the King, Queen Camilla, and other senior royals might be intercepted and transmitted to foreign intelligence services was almost too disturbing to contemplate. The investigation team faced a complex challenge. They needed to map the full extent of the surveillance network without alerting those responsible that their operation had been compromised. Any obvious changes in security procedures or suspicious activity could trigger a shutdown of the entire operation, destroying evidence and allowing those responsible to escape accountability. Chen suggested a carefully coordinated approach. Rather than conducting obvious security sweeps that might tip off the surveillance team, they would use the ongoing investigation to gradually identify and locate other devices. Each discovery would be documented and monitored rather than immediately removed, allowing them to build a comprehensive picture of the operation's scope. Over the following weeks, the investigation team implemented their strategy with painstaking care. Using Webb's technical expertise, they began scanning other areas of the palace where sensitive conversations might take place. The King's private study, Queen Camilla's sitting room, and conference rooms used for high-level meetings were all carefully examined using specialized detection equipment. The results were worse than anyone had feared. They found surveillance devices in 7 different locations throughout the palace, including 2 that had been placed in areas used for the most sensitive government briefings. The scope of the intelligence breach was unprecedented, representing a massive failure of palace security that had apparently gone undetected for months. Each device was identical to the one James had originally discovered, professional-grade equipment that required sophisticated installation and regular maintenance. The placement of the devices showed intimate knowledge of palace operations, daily routines, and the locations where the most sensitive conversations took place. James made another crucial discovery during his continued monitoring of Prince William's study. While maintaining his regular security duties, he noticed patterns in when the surveillance device was accessed for maintenance. The timing coincided with specific palace events and shift changes, suggesting that whoever was servicing the devices had detailed knowledge of security schedules and staff rotations. This revelation narrowed the field of potential suspects significantly. The person or persons responsible had to have legitimate access to restricted areas of the palace, detailed knowledge of security procedures, and the technical expertise to maintain sophisticated surveillance equipment. The investigation team was forced to confront the uncomfortable possibility that the threat was coming from within their own ranks. Reynolds implemented what he called Operation Integrity, a covert internal investigation designed to identify palace personnel who might be compromised. The process involved careful analysis of staff access logs, financial records, and personal connections that might indicate foreign influence or recruitment by hostile intelligence services. The internal investigation revealed several concerning patterns. 3 palace staff members had made unexplained overseas trips in recent months, visits that coincided with payments from companies later traced to the Atlantic Strategic Solutions Network. 2 security personnel had received cash payments that they had failed to report through proper channels, raising questions about possible corruption or recruitment. Most disturbing was the discovery that one of the senior palace administrators, Margaret Thornton, had maintained regular contact with Victoria Sterling long before the surveillance operation began. Thornton's position gave her access to the highest levels of palace operations, including advanced knowledge of royal schedules, meeting locations, and security arrangements. The investigation team faced a delicate situation. They had identified several individuals who appeared to be compromised, but they needed to gather more evidence before taking action. Moving too quickly could alert other members of the network and potentially compromise the broader investigation into Atlantic Strategic Solutions and their international operations. Chen coordinated with her contacts at MI5 and MI6 to share intelligence about the surveillance network. The security services were shocked to learn about the extent of the palace penetration and immediately launched their own parallel investigations into Atlantic Strategic Solutions and its international connections. The intelligence community's investigation revealed that the royal surveillance operation was part of a much larger program targeting political leaders, senior civil servants, and influential private citizens across multiple countries. The information being collected was apparently being sold to the highest bidders, including foreign governments seeking intelligence about Western government policies and decision-making processes. James found himself at the center of an investigation that had expanded far beyond his initial discovery of a hidden microphone. He was regularly briefed on new developments and asked to assist with technical aspects of the ongoing surveillance of the surveillance network. The irony wasn't lost on him that they were now conducting their own covert monitoring operation to gather evidence against those who had been secretly monitoring the royal family. The psychological toll of the investigation began to affect everyone involved. James struggled with the knowledge that he was protecting Prince William during public engagements while knowing that the prince's private conversations continued to be intercepted. Reynolds grappled with the implications of a security breach that had occurred on his watch and could potentially end his career. The entire team worked under enormous pressure, knowing that one mistake could compromise the investigation and allow those responsible to escape justice. During a particularly tense briefing, Webb announced that he had made progress in tracing the ultimate destination of the intercepted communications. The encrypted data streams from the palace surveillance devices were being routed through multiple servers in different countries before reaching their final destination. The sophisticated routing was designed to obscure the identity of those receiving the intelligence, but Webb's technical analysis had identified several potential endpoints. The data is being collected by at least 3 different entities, Webb explained. One appears to be a European intelligence service, another traces back to a private intelligence company in the United States, and the third endpoint is registered to a company with ties to Eastern European organized crime networks. The revelation that the surveillance operation was serving multiple clients added another layer of complexity to the investigation. The royal family's private conversations weren't just being monitored by a single foreign intelligence service.
They were being commoditized and sold to anyone willing to pay for the information.
Reynolds made the difficult decision to brief select members of the government about the situation. The Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, and the heads of the intelligence services were quietly informed about the scope of the surveillance operation and the ongoing investigation. The political implications were enormous, given that many of the intercepted conversations involved government officials and diplomatic discussions. The government's response was swift and decisive. Additional resources were allocated to the investigation, and a joint task force was established to coordinate between palace security, law enforcement, and the intelligence services. The operation was given the highest security classification, and everyone involved was reminded of their obligations under the Official Secrets Act. As the investigation entered its most intensive phase, James reflected on how his routine security sweep had triggered a national security investigation that was revealing connections between international intelligence networks, organized crime, and potential traitors within the heart of the British establishment. The hidden microphone beneath Prince William's desk had been the key that unlocked a conspiracy far more extensive and dangerous than anyone had initially imagined. The device continued to pulse its soft LED light, faithfully recording conversations and transmitting them to multiple unknown recipients. But now, instead of operating in complete secrecy, every transmission was being monitored and analyzed by the very people it had been secretly watching. The surveillance network was about to discover that their greatest vulnerability was the false sense of security created by their own success. Reynolds knew that the time was rapidly approaching when they would have to move from investigation to action. The evidence was mounting, the network was mapped, and the suspects were identified. The question now was how to dismantle the entire operation without allowing any of those responsible to escape justice or destroy crucial evidence. The discovery that had begun with James Mitchell's keen observation was about to trigger a confrontation that would test everyone's loyalty and determine the future security of the British royal family. The operation to dismantle the surveillance network began at dawn on November 15, 2024. Reynolds had spent weeks coordinating with law enforcement and intelligence services to ensure that all aspects of the conspiracy could be addressed simultaneously. The complexity of the operation required precise timing, as any delay could allow suspects to destroy evidence or flee the country. James found himself assigned to a critical role in the operation's first phase. His knowledge of the palace surveillance devices and their locations made him essential to the evidence collection process. Working alongside Dr. Webb and a team of forensic specialists, his job was to carefully document and remove each device while preserving crucial evidence about how the network operated. The first target was Margaret Thornton, the senior palace administrator whose communications with Victoria Sterling had made her a prime suspect. At 6:30 in the morning, as Thornton arrived for what she believed would be a routine day at work, she was met by Detective Inspector Chen and two other officers from Scotland Yard's counterintelligence unit. Thornton's reaction to being confronted about her role in the surveillance operation provided the first confirmation that the investigation team's suspicions were correct. Rather than expressing shock or confusion, she immediately asked for legal representation and refused to answer questions without a solicitor present. Her calm, professional response suggested someone who had been prepared for the possibility of discovery. Meanwhile, coordinated raids were taking place across London. Victoria Sterling's office at Meridian Protection Services was searched by a joint team from MI5 and the Metropolitan Police. The sophisticated equipment found there included not only receivers for the palace surveillance devices, but also technical gear for intercepting mobile phone communications and hacking into computer networks. Sterling herself was arrested at her Mayfair apartment, where investigators found encrypted communication devices, false identity documents, and evidence of financial transfers from multiple offshore accounts. Her apartment also contained detailed dossiers on several members of the royal family, government ministers, and prominent business leaders, suggesting that the surveillance operation extended far beyond the palace walls. The technical evidence gathered during the raids painted a picture of a sophisticated intelligence operation that had been running for at least 2 years. Computer servers contained thousands of hours of recorded conversations, detailed analysis reports, and correspondence with clients who had purchased the intercepted information. The scope of the privacy violations was staggering. James experienced a mix of satisfaction and disgust as he carefully removed the surveillance device from beneath Prince William's desk. The small electronic package that had started his investigation looked innocuous in the daylight, but he knew it represented months of violated privacy and potentially compromised national security. As he placed it in an evidence bag, he reflected on how this tiny device had triggered an investigation that exposed an international conspiracy. Dr. Webb's analysis of the seized equipment revealed the true sophistication of the surveillance network. The intercepted conversations had been processed using artificial intelligence software that could identify and flag discussions of particular interest to the network's clients. Keywords related to government policy, international relations, and personal relationships were automatically tagged and prioritized for analysis. The AI processing had created detailed profiles of each surveillance target, including analysis of their personality traits, political views, and personal vulnerabilities. These profiles were apparently used to identify information that could be used for blackmail or influence operations, adding another sinister dimension to what initially appeared to be simple espionage. Prince William was finally briefed about the surveillance operation and the investigation that had been conducted without his knowledge. Reynolds and James met with the prince in a secure location away from the palace to ensure that their conversation could not be intercepted. Prince William's reaction was a mixture of anger about the privacy violation and concern about the broader implications for royal security. "How long had this been going on?" Prince William asked, his voice controlled but clearly strained. "We believe the surveillance began at least 8 months ago," Reynolds replied, "possibly longer. The devices were sophisticated and well hidden. If Officer Mitchell hadn't noticed that your desk had been moved, we might never have discovered them." Prince William turned to James with a look of gratitude that made the weeks of stress and secrecy worthwhile. "You potentially saved not just my privacy, but the security of my entire family. I won't forget that." The investigation team also had to brief other members of the royal family who had been surveillance targets. The king was informed about devices found in his private study, while Queen Camilla learned that her sitting room had been monitored for months. The revelation that their most private conversations had been intercepted and potentially sold to foreign interests was deeply troubling for the entire royal household. The international dimensions of the case began to emerge as intelligence services shared information about Atlantic Strategic Solutions and its network of client organizations. The company had apparently sold intercepted royal communications to intelligence services from at least 4 different countries, as well as to private clients including multinational corporations and organized crime networks. The geopolitical implications were significant. Some of the intercepted conversations had involved discussions about international trade negotiations, diplomatic initiatives, and defense cooperation agreements. Foreign governments had potentially gained access to sensitive information about British policy positions before official negotiations even began.
Margaret Thornton's interrogation provided crucial insights into how the surveillance network had operated.
After being presented with overwhelming evidence of her involvement, she agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her confession revealed the sophisticated recruitment and operational methods used by Atlantic Strategic Solutions. Thornton had been approached 2 years earlier by someone claiming to represent a security consulting firm that needed insider information to protect high-profile clients. The recruitment had been gradual, starting with requests for seemingly innocent information about palace procedures and gradually escalating to providing access for surveillance device installation and maintenance. The financial inducements had been substantial. Thornton had received over £200,000 through various offshore accounts in exchange for her cooperation. The money had been presented as consulting fees for security advice, providing a veneer of legitimacy that helped overcome her initial reluctance to betray her position. Victoria Sterling's interrogation was more challenging. As a professional intelligence operative, she was trained to resist questioning and revealed little beyond confirming details that investigators already knew from other sources. However, her encrypted communication devices provided valuable intelligence about the broader Atlantic Strategic Solutions Network and its international operations. The forensic analysis of Sterling's equipment revealed communications with operatives in at least 12 different countries, suggesting a global intelligence collection network far more extensive than anyone had initially realized. The royal surveillance operation was apparently just one small part of a massive commercial espionage enterprise targeting political leaders, business executives, and other influential individuals worldwide. James found himself testifying before a closed session of the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament, providing detailed evidence about his discovery of the surveillance devices and the subsequent investigation. The parliamentary inquiry was examining not only the specific breach of royal security, but also the broader implications of commercial intelligence networks operating on British soil. The legal proceedings against those involved in the surveillance operation were complex and politically sensitive. Margaret Thornton pleaded guilty to charges under the Official Secrets Act and received a substantial prison sentence. Victoria Sterling faced more serious charges related to espionage and conspiracy, with the possibility of extradition to face similar charges in other countries, where Atlantic Strategic Solutions had operated. The investigation also revealed that several other palace staff members had been compromised to varying degrees. Some had unknowingly provided information that was useful to the surveillance operation, while others had been more actively recruited as intelligence assets. The security review that followed led to significant changes in palace procedures and personnel screening processes. Reynolds faced intense scrutiny about how such an extensive surveillance operation had gone undetected for so long. While he ultimately kept his position, the investigation report was critical of several security procedures that had failed to identify the threat. The recommendations included enhanced technical surveillance detection, improved personnel security screening, and better coordination with intelligence services. For James, the resolution of the case brought both recognition and unwanted attention. He received commendations from senior palace officials and was promoted within the Royal Protection Service, but he also found himself under increased scrutiny from media outlets interested in the story of how a routine security sweep had uncovered an international espionage network. The broader investigation into Atlantic Strategic Solutions continued for months after the palace surveillance network was dismantled. International law enforcement cooperation led to arrests in several countries and the shutdown of multiple intelligence collection operations. However, investigators suspected that other similar networks remained active and were likely adapting their methods to avoid detection. The psychological impact on the royal family was significant. Knowing that their most private conversations had been intercepted and analyzed by foreign intelligence services created a lasting sense of violation that was difficult to overcome. Additional security measures were implemented, but the damage to their sense of privacy and security was profound. Prince William privately thanked James again during a security briefing several weeks after the arrests. "I know this couldn't have been easy for you," he said. "Discovering something like this and having to keep it secret while continuing to do your job must have been incredibly difficult." James nodded, thinking about the sleepless nights and constant worry that had characterized the investigation period. "It was the right thing to do, sir. That's what we're here for, to protect you and your family from exactly these kinds of threats." The case also had broader implications for royal security procedures worldwide. Intelligence services in other countries began reviewing their own protective protocols for heads of state and other high-profile figures, recognizing that commercial surveillance networks posed a new type of threat that traditional security measures might not detect. As the immediate crisis passed and normal routines resumed, James continued his regular duties with a heightened awareness of potential threats. The discovery of the hidden microphone had changed his perspective on security work, making him more vigilant and more skeptical of anything that seemed out of place. The device that had started everything, the small surveillance microphone hidden beneath Prince William's desk, was now secured in an evidence vault, awaiting use in the legal proceedings against those responsible. But its impact on palace security, royal privacy, and international intelligence cooperation would continue to be felt for years to come. Reynolds used the case as a teaching example for new palace security personnel, emphasizing the importance of attention to detail and the need to question anything that seemed unusual, no matter how minor. James's observation that a desk had been moved slightly had ultimately exposed a conspiracy that threatened the highest levels of British security. The confrontation phase of the operation had been successful in dismantling the immediate threat and bringing those responsible to justice. However, everyone involved knew that this was likely just one example of a much larger problem. Commercial intelligence networks were becoming increasingly sophisticated, and the demand for insider information about political leaders and government operations was growing. 6 months after the surveillance network was dismantled, James Mitchell stood in the same study where he had made his world-changing discovery. The room had been completely renovated as part of enhanced security measures, with new furniture, updated electronic systems, and sophisticated counter-surveillance equipment that would detect any future attempts at covert monitoring. Prince William's antique desk had been replaced with a modern, specially designed piece that incorporated multiple security features. The legal proceedings against Victoria Sterling and her associates had concluded with convictions on multiple charges of espionage, conspiracy, and violations of the Official Secrets Act. Sterling received a 25-year prison sentence, while Margaret Thornton was sentenced to 12 years. The international cooperation that had made these prosecutions possible had also led to the dismantling of similar surveillance networks in several other countries. James had been promoted to Senior Protection Officer and was now responsible for training new personnel in advanced threat detection techniques. His experience with the surveillance case had made him a sought-after expert in counterintelligence within the Royal Protection Service, and he regularly briefed international security services about the methods used by commercial intelligence networks. The psychological impact on the royal family had been profound and lasting. Prince William had undergone counseling to help deal with the sense of violation and betrayal that came from knowing his most private conversations had been monitored and sold to foreign interests. The knowledge that personal discussions about his children, his marriage, and his concerns about royal duties had been commoditized and analyzed by strangers had been deeply traumatic. King Charles had ordered a comprehensive review of royal security that extended far beyond the immediate threat posed by surveillance devices. The review examined everything from personnel screening procedures to communication protocols, resulting in the most significant overhaul of royal protection measures in modern history. The recommendations included the creation of a new Royal Cybersecurity Unit and enhanced cooperation with intelligence services. Dr. Press, Webb had been recruited to head the new cybersecurity unit, bringing his technical expertise to bear on emerging digital threats to royal privacy and security. His analysis of the surveillance network's methods had revealed vulnerabilities that extended far beyond physical surveillance devices to include potential cyber attacks, social media manipulation, and other forms of digital espionage. The international investigation into Atlantic Strategic Solutions had revealed a global network of commercial intelligence operations that posed threats to government security in dozens of countries. The company's client list included foreign intelligence services, multinational corporations, organized crime networks, and private individuals seeking information for blackmail or competitive advantage. Detective Inspector Chen had been assigned to lead a new joint task force between Scotland Yard and the intelligence services, focusing specifically on commercial espionage threats to government officials and other high-profile targets. The task force was developing new methods for detecting and disrupting these operations before they could cause significant damage to national security. The case had also led to changes in legislation governing commercial intelligence activities. Parliament passed new laws that made it easier to prosecute individuals and organizations involved in unauthorized surveillance of government officials, while also providing enhanced penalties for those convicted of selling intelligence to foreign powers. For Prince William, the aftermath of the surveillance case had involved difficult decisions about trust and security. He had been forced to limit his circle of confidants and to conduct sensitive conversations only in specially secured locations. The spontaneity and privacy that had characterized his personal communications were casualties of the betrayal by those he had trusted to protect him. The royal family's relationship with the media had also been affected by the case. The knowledge that foreign intelligence services had access to private royal communications raised questions about other potential security breaches and whether sensitive information had been leaked to tabloid newspapers or other media outlets. Additional security measures were implemented to protect royal privacy from all forms of unauthorized disclosure. James often reflected on how his routine security check had triggered a chain of events that exposed an international conspiracy and led to significant changes in how governments around the world protected their most senior officials. The small observation about a moved desk had ultimately saved not just Prince William's privacy, but potentially prevented much more serious security breaches. The technical analysis of the surveillance equipment had provided valuable intelligence about the capabilities and methods of commercial espionage networks. This information was shared with security services in allied countries and led to the detection of similar operations targeting political leaders in several other nations. The international cooperation that resulted from the case strengthened counterintelligence capabilities worldwide. Reynolds had used the case to establish new training protocols for royal protection officers, emphasizing the importance of observation skills and attention to detail. Every new officer was briefed about the surveillance case and trained to recognize potential indicators of covert monitoring activities. The story of James's discovery became a cautionary tale about the need for constant vigilance. The financial investigation into Atlantic Strategic Solutions had revealed the enormous profits generated by commercial intelligence operations. The company had generated hundreds of millions of dollars selling intercepted communications and other intelligence to clients around the world. The scale of the operation suggested that similar networks were likely operating in other regions and targeting different categories of high-value individuals. Margaret Thornton's cooperation with investigators had provided crucial insights into the recruitment and operational methods used by commercial intelligence networks. Her detailed debriefings revealed how seemingly legitimate business relationships could be used to gradually recruit insiders and how small compromises could escalate into serious security breaches over time. The case had also highlighted the vulnerability of even the most secure facilities to insider threats. Despite extensive background checks and security protocols, Thornton had been successfully recruited and had operated undetected for nearly 2 years. This realization led to enhanced monitoring of personnel with access to sensitive areas and information. Prince William had personally thanked James during a private ceremony recognizing his contribution to royal security. The prince's words about duty, vigilance, and protection had reinforced James's commitment to his role and his understanding of the vital importance of the work performed by royal protection officers. The surveillance devices themselves had been preserved as evidence and were also being studied by technical experts to better understand the capabilities and methods of commercial surveillance operations. The sophistication of the equipment had surprised even experienced intelligence professionals and highlighted the need for enhanced counter-surveillance measures. The international implications of the case continued to unfold months after the initial arrests. Several countries had initiated their own investigations into potential surveillance networks operating within their borders, leading to additional arrests and the discovery of other commercial intelligence operations. The case had effectively exposed an entire industry that had been operating largely in the shadows. For James, the most satisfying aspect of the case's resolution was knowing that Prince William and his family could once again have private conversations without fear of being monitored by hostile interests. The restoration of royal privacy had required significant changes and ongoing vigilance, but it represented a victory over those who had sought to profit from violating the most basic right to confidential communication. The enhanced security measures implemented in response to the case had created new challenges for the royal family's daily activities. Additional screening procedures, restricted access to certain areas, and enhanced communication protocols had all impacted the informal atmosphere that had previously characterized much of royal family life. However, these measures were accepted as necessary consequences of the new threat environment. The case had also led to increased cooperation between palace security and international intelligence services. Regular briefings and information-sharing arrangements had been established to ensure that future threats could be identified and addressed before they could compromise royal security. The isolation that had previously characterized royal protection had been replaced by active engagement with the broader security community. James's role in training new protection officers had given him the opportunity to share the lessons learned from the surveillance case with the next generation of royal security personnel. His emphasis on the importance of small observations and attention to detail had become a cornerstone of the new training curriculum. The psychological support provided to the royal family in the aftermath of the case had been extensive and ongoing. Professional counselors had helped family members deal with the sense of violation and betrayal that came from knowing their private communications had been intercepted and sold. The recovery process had been slow but necessary for maintaining their emotional well-being. Dr. Webb's ongoing analysis of cyber threats to royal security had revealed additional vulnerabilities that extended far beyond physical surveillance devices. His work had led to enhanced protection of royal communication systems, social media monitoring, and protection against potential cyber attacks targeting royal family members. The case had demonstrated the evolving nature of threats to government security in an interconnected world where information had become a valuable commodity. The traditional boundaries between espionage, organized crime, and commercial competition had become increasingly blurred, requiring new approaches to threat detection and prevention. As James concluded his security sweep of the renovated study, he reflected on how much had changed since he first discovered the hidden surveillance device. The room was now one of the most secure locations in the palace, protected by multiple layers of technical and physical security measures. But more importantly, the trust and privacy that had been violated had been restored through the dedication and professionalism of those committed to protecting the royal family. The small LED light that had once pulsed beneath Prince William's desk was now just a memory, but its discovery had triggered changes that would protect not just the royal family, but government officials and other high-profile individuals around the world. James Mitchell's attention to detail and commitment to his duties had ultimately helped expose a conspiracy that threatened the foundations of democratic governance and personal privacy. The case of the hidden recording device would be studied by security professionals for years to come, serving as both a cautionary tale about emerging threats and an example of how dedicated individuals could make a difference in protecting those they were sworn to serve. For James, it remained a reminder of why his work mattered and why constant vigilance was the price of security in an increasingly complex and dangerous world.